So, hi everybody, we're there, we're all set up. Thanks for joining us again for this third session. My name's John Franklin, I'm Head of Safety Promotion here at EASA in Cologne, and I'm joined in our studio by
Laura Watson. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm the Seasonal Readiness Manager for EasyJet.
And for this third and final webinar, we're going to be talking about the subject of winter readiness. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of where we are in our program and all the other kind of logistics bits, so you don't miss anything. And if you've enjoyed this session, potentially we might have some people. Then we've had 3 sessions this week. Yesterday afternoon we had one on winter readiness and the main winter risks. We had a great session this morning on de-icing. In fact, it felt, I think, like we could have done that another hour. So maybe we have to come back and do a follow-up webinar on that one for sure. And now we're doing snow clearance. If you missed the other ones or you have colleagues who want to watch them back, you can actually go already onto the EASA's Together for Safety YouTube channel, and you can watch them already. As soon as we finished them, they were available back online, so it's all done. Give me a second. In fact,
Carry on.
You carry on talking about what we've been doing, and we're trying to get one of our panelists in. So,
right, okay, no worries. Yeah, so as John said, they're already up on the Together for Safety YouTube. The links will on the Winter Readiness where you registered. They will then be replaced with the actual links for the YouTube channel after this last webinar has finished. So anyone in your organisation that hasn't been able to join, feel free to send those links on. We had some really great discussions in both the webinars so far, and hopefully this one will be no different. We're just trying to get our last panelist in.
Oh, right, there we go. Sorry, madly typing. Thankfully, we have multiple screens here. So, yeah, we got an email from the panelist that we were trying to hook in. So just the other things in terms of logistics, thanks for filling in, great. Is we encourage as much Q&A as possible. So we have Slido is embedded into the webinar tool, into WebEx. So you should be able to go to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and there's apps and Slido, and you should now be able to access the Q&A. In fact, just had to set that there. So we have the Q&A there. Now, what I would say to that is, feel free to put your questions in, but also look at the other questions that have been asked. And potentially, if we get a lot of questions, we take the ones that have got the most upvotes. So feel free to upvote other questions that are vaguely similar, perhaps, rather than sometimes we have lots and lots of questions, but 10 at the bottom end. Okay, we're starting to get some questions coming in on the chat as well. If you have any particular problems with the feed or anything like that, you can put questions in the chat. Now, we're also, as we said, streaming to YouTube. So if you happen to be following us on the YouTube, you can always put questions in the YouTube comments. And then the other thing is you can go to Slido itself. I know some people have the app. And you can go in there and use hashtag winter 2023 and the code Tango Kilo Lima Alpha Whiskey Papa. It's there on the screen. I'll leave it up for a minute if anybody wants to note that down. But hopefully, for most people, you're in the WebEx, you can access it there through that. If you do, we'll monitor the chat as well. I'd say please put questions in the Slido and not the chat, but we'll continue to monitor and see how everything goes, and we'll be fine. So in terms of what we've got during this agenda, so I'll come back in a second and just give a couple of updates from an EASA perspective about what we have and some things from our side. And then we've got some case studies looking particularly at London Gatwick, kind of pilot view on the situation, and then from Paris Orly. So probably now is a good time to ask our panelists, if I stop sharing so you can actually see their faces, is to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. So if I start with our first panelist from London Gatwick, Paul, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi there. Thanks for having me on this afternoon, guys. My name's Paul Johnston. I'm one of the aerodrome operations managers at Gatwick, and I'm going to talk to you about our winter operation and how we deal with snow and ice clearing.
Fantastic, thanks. And Amy, maybe you could introduce yourself next.
Absolutely, yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm a flight operations safety captain for EasyJet, and as part of my role, I'm a line captain based at London Gatwick, so that's where I do my flying from.
Fantastic, thanks for joining us as well. And Michelle, great that we managed to get you in. Maybe you could introduce yourself next.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Michelle Mondel, working at Paris Orly as Gen Ops Manager for airside operations.
Fantastic, thanks. And Greg, maybe you could introduce yourself. We got Greg to join us as well, having been in the other webinars, so we have a ground handling kind of view on in any of the discussions. Greg.
Oh, my name is Greg Labeck. I'm head of the action operation for Europe at Menzies Aviation, and I'm on the merit here from previous two webinars. So,
fantastic, great. Thanks for coming back. It's much appreciated. So, just to give you a few quick things from the EASA side, let me just quickly share my screen again. So, from our side, there were a couple of updates just to give you. So we've had a lot of discussion, or various discussion, not really a lot of discussion, but some questions about the new EASA ground handling rules. So we're at the point now we're in the second phase of focus consultation, and the opinion is expected towards the end of the year, and we'll continue to communicate and update on the situations with that. And as we talked about in the initial session yesterday, and also a little bit this morning, is particularly de-icing that we talked about before. There are some areas that we're talking about now where it's not in the first version of the new regulation, but there'll be some follow-up consultations and lots of discussions to add that and other areas as the regulation develops into the second and potentially future parts. So that's where things are with that. Then from our side, particularly in terms of from the EASA safety promotion team, so we're trying to do as many of these different events and webinars on all sorts of different topics. And actually we did a webinar on the ground handling regulation with my colleague Adina and with Julia Egre and the rest of the team, Vasilius from the aerodromes team. So actually you can go back, if you go to EASA past events, you can go back and see all of the different webinars we've done in the past. And what we normally do in the same way we will with this one is you can go to the events pages, you can see in past, so you go to EASA events and then past events, and within each event page will normally be a PDF of all of the PowerPoints that were provided, and then links to either the EASA or Together for Safety YouTube channel, where we'll have then the recordings placed that you can watch back and all sorts of other things. So you'll be able to go back and do all of those things as well. So yeah, we've done things also on runway condition reporting and other topics, and we'll continue to try and discuss and promote and share whatever material that we have. And actually one thing we've particularly done, and I encourage people to go to if you haven't already found it, is we created a so from an EASA side, obviously we have the official EASA website, but it's not so easy to interact and engage with that and to do that through an official kind of regulator's website. So we have these community sites. We actually have one for air operations where we bring not just traditional flight ops, but kind of everything fixed wing kind of airline cargo operations. We have one also for general aviation, for rotorcraft, and for cyber security as well, in case you're interested. But within the air ops one, we then have all sorts of different kind of topics and discussions that we have. So there's various topics here, and you'll see we can tag them. You can tag them and see tags and things of specific interest. But one of the particular things is at the start of the year. So one of the things we found talking to particularly airlines and airports is there were lots of people doing safety magazines, but basically lots of well-meaning people writing articles, and we were seeing lots of duplicating of effort in airlines and airports, where lots of people created lots of articles, put them into different versions of different magazines, and very fancy kind of properly designed things, or things that were made kind of with Word and stuff like that. So we pulled our efforts with a number of organizations, and we've created an EASA quarterly safety magazine. We base it around a fake airline called Safe Wings, which enables us to take inputs from lots of different organizations and kind of share it in a way that doesn't expose any one organization. So here's an example. We did one on summer readiness that we launched on the 7th of July. And what we specifically do is the magazine itself is available in different formats. We have even a low resolution version that makes it easier to email around. So this is the magazine here. It's purely an electronic magazine. So we have lots of different topics and things from EASA and things from our Safe Wings airline. But the thing that's particularly interesting is that we make the files of the whole magazine completely available to any organization to remove all of the EASA branding and put your own branding to create your own magazine, edit it however you wish. So if anybody's ever interested in having their own safety magazine for very little effort, you can even, so we have some airlines who are using it now where they edit the title parts but leave the rest. You know, this is important here at airline X because, or airport Y because whatever, and then leave the article. This is an article from EASA. And they use, and there's lots of different versions of the same. So if anybody wants any of these, they're available to download on the site here. Or if you ever want to have the Adobe, we have a full set of Adobe Creative Cloud files we can share with any organization who wants to use it for their own magazine. Drop us an email to safetypromotion@easa.europa.eu. Or similarly, contact me on LinkedIn with a message, and you know, we're here to help and do whatever we can. It's a phrase that surprises people, is the suggestion that I'm from the regulator and I'm here to help. But we really are, and that's kind of what we're trying to do, is change the way perhaps we communicate a little bit, try and be more engaging and do things that attract people's attention and really be collaborative and share lots of good practice. And I think this set of webinars have been really good at that, because we've, particularly as you saw, hopefully those that joined the de-icing session yesterday, this morning, is that we had lots of great good practice that we can put then in the next version of the magazine, in articles to follow and other things like that, that will really help to bring this material together and make it available to as many people as possible. So that's all the kind of things that we're doing, and hopefully, if you ever want to engage with us on safety promotion, or you need help with it, your own promotion, don't hesitate to reach out to me. So that's kind of our EASA update and pitch. I've done my bit. Thank you very much for bearing with me. So we're going to get into the really kind of key, serious kind of part of the discussion now, and I'm just going to quickly share Paul's presentation so you can see that, and Paul can get into his presentation. So give us just 2 seconds, and I'll share this with you. And Paul, the floor is yours.
Cool.
There we go. Okay, let's go.
Cracking. So firstly, thanks, like I've already said, for having me on this afternoon. I do really appreciate the opportunity to talk through what we're doing at Gatwick. If we could have the next slide, that'd be great. So firstly, before I start, just run through some general information about Gatwick, because I'm assuming not everybody knows too much about Gatwick as an airport itself. So Gatwick is an international airport serving London. It's located around 30 miles south of central London, and in 2022 we were the second busiest airport by passenger traffic in the UK, and was 8th busiest across Europe. It covers a total area of 1,670 acres, and Gatwick opened as an aerodrome in the late 1920s and been used for commercial flights since 1933. The airport has 2 terminals, the North Terminal and the South Terminal. It operates as a single runway airport using the main runway, which has a length of 3,316 metres. We do have a second runway, but it's only available when the main runway isn't actually being used due to its proximity to the main runway. The airport is a base for scheduled airlines such as EasyJet, British Airways and Wizz Air. Gatwick is unique amongst the London airports in its representation of the three main airline business models, so full service, low cost and charter traffic. We handled 32.8 million passengers in 2022, and pre-pandemic in 2019, we handled 46.6 million passengers, which we're working to getting back towards, but are some way off of that just yet. We have 119 stands with 186 centre lines in total, so parking available for up to 186 aircraft, depending on the configuration. We have 31 stands in the south, 31 in the north, and 57 remote stands available. If we could have the next one, that'd be great. So the weather climate at Gatwick, the summers are short and comfortable, and the winters are very cold and pretty long, with quite a bit of cloud. Over the course of the year, the temperature typically varies between 1 degree and 22 degrees, and very rarely below -4 or above 28 degrees. The cool season lasts for around 4 months, from November through to March, with an average daily high of below 10. The coldest month of the year is February, with an average low of 2 and a high of 8. Next slide, please. So what we do, I'm going to talk through what we do in terms of preparation. So we test our winter plan annually by way of tabletop exercise, which is hosted by ourselves. It's attended by our airlines, ground handlers, airline, de-icing companies, and all of the Gatwick operational teams. So airfield ops, terminal operations, security operations, our stable ops team, the landside ops team, as well as our airport fire service. So it really is a kind of collaborative event and gives everybody an opportunity to explore not only our plan, but their own individual plans. From the start of our winter season, we hold weekly snow and ice clearing rehearsals of the runway and the taxiways, and so that takes place from the 1st of November through to the 31st of March. We also carry out weekly look-ahead sessions with the airport community to review their staff and equipment, with a particular emphasis on kind of adverse weather and how we might respond to that, and what the resource and equipment is looking like. Our own winter operational vehicle fleet is inspected for serviceability issues in rotation daily throughout the winter period, and obviously any defects are reported to our engineering team so that they can be rectified, so that we are ready to go when the adverse weather does actually hit us. The Met Office is our weather forecasting provider, and as part of that service we do ensure that all of our key decision makers within Gatwick do receive annual training with them, just so that we can update ourselves, make sure we're sort of refreshed as to what we're looking at and know what we're actually doing with the information that the Met Office provide to us. We carry out daily check-ins with the Met Office 5 days out from any forecasted adverse weather conditions, and we increase that to every 12 hours, 24 hours out for the duration of any weather event. In addition to that, we do have access to talk to the Met Office whenever we like by telephone, and that's in addition to the forecasting reports in which they provide us. We do have 200 polar bear volunteers and external contractors which are trained annually in road and aircraft stand snow and ice clearing techniques. Polar bears are basically staff employed directly by GAO in other areas, namely the security department, and they're just brought in for training starting in August. That continues through till the end of October, and then we just call upon them as and when we need them to assist with winter clearance activities. We also have 150 airfield and airport fire service staff trained in runway and taxiway snow clearing techniques each year. And then following the winter operation, we will carry out a post-winter operation review just to capture any learnings to make sure they're taken forward into the following year, so that we can make sure our processes are updated to reflect any learnings that have happened. Next slide, please. So our winter operation plan highlights. So all of our snow clearance procedures comply with the UK acceptable means of compliance at CAA regulation 139/2014 for aerodrome operations. in winter conditions, which also includes CAP 2173 assessment, measurement and reporting for runway surface conditions for certified aerodromes. So I think it's already been mentioned, but GRF. The equipment available for snow clearance is capable of ploughing, sweeping and snow blowing. And like I've already said, the snow plan is effective from the 1st of November through to the 31st of March, unless extended by the head of aerodrome and agreed by all affected parties. No snowbanks will be built up at runway taxiway intersections. The runway centre line, edge lighting and the pappies are to be kept clear of snow at all times. And the de-icing media which we choose to use is Safe Grip Eco 2, and we hold 344,000 litres of that on site. We also have solid acetate prills, and again we keep 35,000 kilograms of that on site. We do have 172,000 litres of Consin. It would be used as a last resort. It's not something that we've used in anger for some time. And it will always be at the discretion of the AOM, and it probably will only get used if we was to run out of Eco 2, which hopefully we would never do. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is a bit of an infographic. There's a lot of information on there, but I'll run through some of the highlights there. So since 2010, which was the last significant weather event within the UK, Gatwick has invested just over £15 million on our winter programme. We now, like I've already mentioned, have 200 polar bear volunteers each year trained, and these guys are used to clear the stands and the associated infrastructure. We're also supported by 70 contractors by way of 50 lorries and 20 shovels, and these guys are basically used to predominantly remove the snow piles that are built up around the airfield and taken away from the aerodrome. I've already mentioned that we use Eco 2 and have access to Consin, and we hold 10 days worth of activity to get us through, but we also have really good supply chain in place, which means we can get hold of and replace our media as we use it fairly quickly. So our vehicle fleet, we have 30 track masters with front mounted brushes. These are used to clear snow from around the aircraft. They're supported by 20 multi-hogs, which have front-mounted blades and brushes. So these sweep snow from the stands, heads of stands, and any other associated areas. They also have the capability to spread the de-icing media that we obviously use. And then we have 32 tractor and front-mounted blades with rear brushes. Again, these are used predominantly on the stands. They're fairly manoeuvrable bits of kit. We would only generally use them on stands which are empty. We wouldn't like to manoeuvre these around aircraft because, like I say, they are big pieces of kit. And then we move on to our larger bits of kit, which are predominantly used within the taxiways and on the runways. So we have 6 de-icing vehicles. It says 9 shorelines there, so that's a typo on my behalf, so I apologise for that. We do only have 6. These are used predominantly on the taxiways, and we also use them for clearing of our RETs because they are a little bit smaller and a little bit more manoeuvre than the actual shorelines which we use on the runway. So we have 9 of those. They're fitted with 5.5 metre midsection brushes and 9 metre blades at the front, and they are then supported by 4 snow cutters, which we then use on the runway as well, or anywhere where there's snow built up that we need to kind of remove into either the grass areas or into the back of vehicles. So moving on to our clearing processes. So there's 2 diagrams there, one of an occupied stand, one of an empty stand. So on an occupied stand, we will use the track masters to clear 2 metres around the aircraft fuselage with the track masters. And then once we're able to push the aircraft back, we would then move on to clearing an empty stand, which basically the guys would use the tractors and the multi-hogs to push any snow into the interstand clearways, at which point it would then be removed from the airfield and taken to a landside location by the external contractors. So moving on to our runway, like I said, we use 9 shorelines on the runway. They will go down the runway in one length in echelon formation. They're followed by two de-icing vehicles, which will de-ice the full width of the runway. And then we'll replace a snow cutter on the edge of the runway to get rid of any snowbanks and blow that into the grass islands. So our runway and taxiway clearance teams are made up of a combination of 25 staff per shift and are brought in as an additional resource to the core ops team. All the teams are supported by a dedicated engineering team who are on site 24/7 to resolve any equipment issues. And the entire winter operations are coordinated by a snowco who is a senior member of the ops leadership team. All of the teams that are on that support the winter operations are placed on call for 7 days in the lead up to any event, and again that can be extended as we need to. That I believe is the end of the presentation. But all I probably would add to all of that is that we are currently in the process of reviewing our clearance strategy at Gatwick. In the sense that following previous wash-ups with flight crews, we're particularly engaged with EasyJet at the moment around probably making more use of the GRF strategy. Our strategy currently is to clear not back to black. We haven't done that since 2016, but we would always try to operate at a RCAM of 5. We believe through some of the discussions that we've already had that there is potentially an appetite to be able to land on something less than a 5, but we're just in the early stages of working through that so we can include that within our strategy moving forward, because we believe we're probably doing an awful lot of work that we probably don't have to do. We don't want to be lazy, but what we probably be able to do is actually have more aircraft land through the snowy period with a view to getting it back towards a 5, and not always just say we're going to work to a 5 or we're going to close. So we're working to try and stay open a little bit longer by using the tools that are available to us. But like I say, that is very early in its kind of planning stages at the moment. And that's it from me. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Paul. Hopefully everybody found that really useful. It was really interesting to kind of see how this works, and it will be interesting to see the picture at Orly as well, and then hopefully see what questions we get in. And what you were saying there, particularly at the end, I think it's a good time to come to Amy from the pilot's perspective. And maybe, Amy, you could talk a little bit about the kind of operating limits from a flight crew perspective you have when it comes to snow, and kind of how kind of things that Paul was talking about, how that relates from the cockpit, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of sort of operating limits and winter operations on a contaminated runway, the short version is that there is no fixed answer in terms of a limitation like we would have, for example, for a crosswind condition. So in terms of winter operations, we would need to consider the runway condition code, as John's talked about a bit there already. And we would also be looking at things like current weather conditions, wind, visibility, characteristics of particular runways as well would be taken into consideration. So things like length, width, slope of the runway. And what we have is we have software on board the aircraft, so that allows us to perform calculations and would include safety margins within these calculations that were performed by the computers on board as well. What we often see from a sort of EasyJet perspective is that often in the airports that we operate to mostly have favourable runway characteristics, so often we operate into quite long runways, so we can still ensure safety margins are maintained if we are indeed operating to a runway condition code of less than 5. So what we tend to do as pilots is we're not necessarily looking at the landing part in isolation. So as Paul said, kind of the old school sort of back to black would be sort of the least risk approach in terms of the landing phase, but we'd be more looking so not just at the landing performance in isolation, so we would look at the risk picture as a whole. So for example, if a runway were to close for us, that would transfer the risk to another area. So perhaps looking then at an alternate airport which might have less favourable conditions or characteristics of a runway. So we'd be looking at management then of possible fuel related delays, and might be trade-off between perhaps waiting at destination for a condition improvement rather than making the decision to divert to somewhere else. Mass diversions, as we've seen in London, occasionally can put associated pressure on flight crew and air traffic control in those sorts of scenarios as well, where we might see other airports that are affected by the same weather. What else can I add on to that? So just to reiterate a bit of what Paul said, so we're in early sort of conversations. I'm part of the central team, but lots of our local base teams, like the team at Gatwick, I know are heavily engaged with Paul about conversations around safety margins and helping how we can look at not transferring the risk to other areas of the operation. And yeah, keen to share information, help ensure that decision making for runway closure and treatment is optimized and considered for all parties. And that's probably, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. That's just what we were looking for. And I think, particularly when you were talking there at the end about the importance of collaboration between airlines, airports, handling organizations, it's one of the biggest things. Whatever the topic, it's one of the central parts. Ironically, it's kind of one of the reasons why we called our magazine Safety Magazine Conversation Aviation, is to encourage this spirit of collaboration across the industry that has people working together, so that when there's whatever operational problem that comes, it's being discussed and it's been potentially whiteboarded or even tested in an anger before the actual problem arises. So I can only reiterate that point as much as possible. And then kind of expanding on the communication and coordination from a pilot perspective, what are the key things in terms of information when you're in the flight deck on a day with bad weather, and particularly in terms of snow on the airfield? What are the kinds of things that you find really important to know to help kind of smooth your day and the operation that you're doing with the aircraft?
I would say it's probably like a broad thing, really. So I would say it doesn't necessarily relate to sort of a single piece of information, but just as in more of a general terms of communication. So any sort of communication that we can get from an airport, so whether that would be communicated via an ATIS or different means, the continual flow of information on the day regarding any closure periods or clearing that might be in process. I think just a continual sort of communication flow around actions that may have been taken is always appreciated, because then that enables us to sort of manage the situation from our side.
Fantastic, thanks for that. That's great. And maybe now's a good time to move on to our next presentation. So Michelle, hopefully, are you comfortable sharing your screen yourself, or we can do it from here, whichever you prefer?
I think we'll be safer if you move it yourself, John, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I'll just get it up on the screen and then we can hand over to you. Okay, there we go. The floor's yours.
All right, thank you very much, John. Again, hi everyone. Thanks for having me today. I will not get very much into our details as far as operations are concerned. I think that Paul did it very well. Everything is very similar. Amy has said what she's expecting. We also are expecting a few things from crews that are operating in and out of our airports. We'll start, John, with a few information on Orly. Real quick, you'll notice that. Go next one, please. This is it. You'll notice with that picture that we are working in a quite urbanized environment. That makes the airport quite compact. We have 2 runways, and one important thing also, we have a curfew. That is, we have a 6 o'clock to 23:30 operation. That means that if for any reason we are not good at snow clearing, it's going to have a big impact on passenger service in airlines operations. So, I mean, what I'm going to be saying is, nobody has the right plan. It has the plan that is adapted to its infrastructure and to its means and to its experience. And what is tough for us, if we go next slide, John, is that how do we make a good snow plan when you have no snow, which has been the case for Paris for quite some time now. Paul was saying that the last very major event we had to face was 2010, 2011. We also had some in 2012, 2013, on which we are still, trying to take some information out of and try to improve our system out of. Basically, what we do from October 15th until April 15th, which is our winter season, as far as Orly and de Gaulle are concerned, we have our presentation of our snow plan. Then we do a lot of exercises because that's one of the key things. So I'll be back to that a little bit later on. Then we're going to have our operations and feedback and all our drills so that we can adjust short-term, mid-term, long-term actions. And then we get into summer, and then we work again as again every airport does, like Paul did, with a review of what has happened, what has been done, what do we have to do in terms of training, what do we have to do in terms of maintenance, what do we have to do in terms of investment, so that the next winter will run smoother. One should not forget that we also have to deal with nature, and that nature will always be stronger than us. So at some point we do our best with the infrastructure, we do our best with the means we have. I'm lucky to work for a company that has a lot of means, but we should not forget that some airports have less revenues that we have, less traffic that we have as well. And of course, the plan is very probably different. If you go next slide, John. It is important for us today to mention that we are back to our standards, I would say, in terms of manpower and equipment. We had to adjust due to COVID for financial contingencies. Due to traffic, we had no traffic, so we had to adjust our winter operations system to what we had and what we could afford. Keeping in mind that we had to have the continuity of service because it's part of the missions that the French government has given us, and considering that we also had to maintain safe operation, of course, with the highest service standards possible, concentrating on clearing all 3 runways that we have, clearing the gates and stands, and adjust to sanitary situation, which is still in a way something that we still have in our system, because it's even if COVID is, we believe all, and we all hope that it is the case, COVID is behind us, but still, we have to bear that. We have to have that in mind for next crisis, just in case. If we go next slide, John. This is our winter operations watch scheme. We have the before winter season, which I've quite quickly described, considering that we have to go all through maintenance, training for the staff, review what has been doing well and what can be improved. And then we get into winter watch with both landside and airside monitoring. We basically live with weather forecast and weather alerts and work on what the situation could be, because building teams for snow clearing, considering the regulations on working hours, is something that is very important for each and every one of us. And that has to be anticipated as much as we can so that you can last as long as the event's going to last. So preparation is really of essence. Then you have the decision to be made. Shall we go for war, or shall we go for something that will definitely not happen? That is to be shared with in-house, and to put the appropriate means in front of the situation that we're going to have. We also have constant relationship with French Météo France, the National Weather Office, before we actually pull the trigger and actually have all the means that are adjusted to the event that we're going to face, and go through operations with the appropriate support and logistics, which is also quite something very important. And then once this is all over, we go for a review, which can be right after the event, if we have the time to, or at the end of the season for something that will be in a deeper reflection, in a longer perspective. So if we go to the next one, John. Okay, so you have the okay. This is just real quick. This is the organization that we have in terms of human resources and equipment. Basically, you need to put your equipment and your human resources in the right way. That can be adjusted depending on the event that you're going to face and on the traffic that you're going to have. But this is a quick organization of what we're going to have in 2023 and 2024. We can go next one. That's the equipment assignment. There again, the infrastructure, of course, is of essence to the equipment that you're going to have in line. This is what we think, what we feel adapted to our infrastructure and our way of doing things. But of course, I'm sure Paul has a different system. I'm sure Copenhagen has a different one. Everyone has an equipment assignment according to its infrastructure and means and will as well. Next one. These are runway clearing times examples considering the means that we have today. So basically, when we have heavy snows, it can take up with including runway inspection and GRF. It can go up to 60 minutes. Actually, I do believe that we can do better than that, especially when we only do de-icing. But when we have heavy snows, Paris snow is quite wet and heavy. It can take quite a while. What is a good thing about having times is that it allows the air traffic controllers to think about how they can organize the patterns when you are working on runways, once your runway is closed, having your equipment on. So it is important to give NSP an idea of what we're going to be, how long we're going to be on the runways. Then we can go to the next slide. Human resources. The Paris organization is thinking about of volunteers. As I said, we have no snow. So if you compare to Denver or Minneapolis or some other friends in Northern Europe, we cannot have dedicated teams. So obviously we rely on a volunteering system, which is every season has some kind of uncertainty, but still we managed to have something like 230 to 245, depending on the years, volunteers, plus some out of the company partners, and we do a lot of training and drills. We'll probably could do more, but considering that these volunteers are working as account managers or human resources or purchase departments. Some of them are airside operations, of course, but considering that we have to gather all these people in one system and having them do regular working hours with their own missions the rest of the week, we also have to consider that with scheduling the drills and training, which makes it a little bit difficult. The challenge is to have, uh, uh, considering that again we have no snow, is to make these people professional, but not but having them professional on snow, but considering that this is not their regular mission. We can go next one. As I said, we're lucky to work with a big company, a big group. So investment is also something that is very important. And we've been keeping on investing since 2010, 2011. I think that the goal is about 80 million euros. And Orly, it's something like 45 now. So we've been investing within the last 12 years a lot of money. But there again, it's a matter of will, it's a matter of decision. Orly and both Orly and the Gaulle, we have decided not to stop operation and maintain airports open, like Bâle, like Munich, like many others. And considering that, we are basically buying an insurance, and investment, and continuous investment in part is definitely part of it. We can move to next one. Products and stations. We use solid formates and liquid formates. We have salt as well, just in case of emergencies. I'm sorry, we use salt for service roads, but we use sand only for emergencies. We do a lot of combination with solid and liquid, considering that liquid formate will treat ice once it's already there, and we do a lot of pre-treatment. So we're going to have an immediate effect with the liquid formate, which we mix with solid formate, so that we're going to have a longer effect, so that we don't go back on runways every 2 or 3 hours, and reduce the impact on our capacities, and increase our safety as well. That can be discussed later on. And also we have the capability of not receiving any product for 5 days at least, considering that we also have advanced storage in nearby the airport, both CDG and Orly, and that our provider is living next door, so that makes things a lot easier as well. Next one, please. GRF, that was a major change in our processes, as we all know. The thing is, in spite of the fact that it's a 12-month business now, a year-round business, it was quite a change for us, because we used to do friction tests, but as per new rules now, we have to work through the RCAM, as Paul and Amy mentioned. That was quite a change, considering that we're not all equal. Small airports have different ways, and probably manuals, and considering that we also have to communicate with ATC, with SNOTAM's offices, and also with the crew. So we had to reorganize our system. And if we go to next one, we work with to make sure that what we were implementing as far as GRF was concerned, we kept in our snow clearing process the friction testers, just to make sure that the evaluation of the GRF that was transmitted was really valid. At the very beginning, people were a little bit lost on how to measure 3 millimeters here and there, and what is slush, and is this solid snow, is this wet snow, how do we calculate that? So we definitely had, especially on or before, on after treatment, we maintain the use of friction test, just to make sure that what we evaluate on the GRF is appropriate. And Amy, you were saying what you were expecting from us. Actually, what we do expect from you guys is PIREPs, because the GRF is not easy to manage and to watch, and whether it is winter or summer, and it is of utmost importance to have, whether we have snowfalls or heavy rainfalls, PIREPs each and every time you can, so that we can monitor the way our runways are moving. Are we still safe? Do we have another hour to go before we have to get out and pre-treat? Or do we have to reduce or change our characterization? So having, good PIREPs is of essence to us. What we do now, especially in winter, when we have 3 consecutive PIREPs that are giving us the same information, we can adjust our characterization. Why do we do that? Because if a Finnish crew is landing in a snowy environment, the guy will tell us, yeah, braking condition is good. But if someone coming from another country, let's say from Africa or from even India, I mean, the impression that the crew may have will probably be different. So we definitely have to have consecutive information that is reliable, so that we can adjust the characterization. So definitely having good PIREPs, I think, for airports is of essence. If we can go to next, John, please. To try to support these characterizations, we have been introducing some sensors and some apps, so that we can figure out how things are moving faster than having to go on runway. Even if we do go on runways to make our characterization, especially when we have significant changes, but we try to support our guys with sensors and some apps. If we go to next one, John. Actually, 2 apps. One is called Airside Watch, and actually it gets the information from our sensors. We can manually adjust it, manually change the characterization that we make, and send this directly to ANSP and SNOWTEM's office, so that we can provide reliable and immediate information to everyone. So that's the communication app, I would say. And we have a second app which is right behind John. Which is made by Boschung, because our sensors are Boschung's. This, give us the information from the one race, and we can use this information as well to adjust our characterization and transmit information with safety line. If we go to next one. John, you were telling about communication. If we go to crisis management and CDM, that's how we definitely get the benefit of crisis management. Analyze, share, and make appropriate decisions together, so that we'll have a very good, I mean, the best airport management we can. So actually, you have to share, analyze, and decide so that you'll definitely have the best decision to make, and put tactical solutions and resources to have the best safety and less impact on our runways. We can go to next one. We have an APOC at Orly. APOC is, we have been implementing the principle in the organization since 2019. It really did improve things, because actually in-house, it made the communication much easier, faster, and in a smoother way, so that everybody knows what's going on, whether it is airside or landside or technical, or all our aspects of our airports. And we can gather this information, so that when we go to the CDM process, John, which is next slide. Press again. Here we go. We can bring that and share that with all the actors on the platform. I think you can press again, John. Activating the CDM cell, discuss with ATC, Eurocontrol, all the airlines, the weather forecast, so that having the maximum information, and sharing information, so that we can take and make the best decision. But definitely, I do agree with you, John. Information sharing and communicating is really of essence when we have snow events. If we can go to next one. To conclude this, we have to. A plan is to anticipate, but there is no good plan. I think plan is made according to a will, to means, to the infrastructure, and basically to the needs. So everyone has its own plan, and I'm sure that everyone's plan is good. We have to have appropriate logistics and support for better efficiency. If you don't have proper maintenance on your equipment, you can have the best snow blowers in the world, but if you cannot start them, that is useless. Training is also of essence. There again, we are not born in Canada or in some states in the US. Our people are not used to snow clear, and even to a cold climate. So we have to put them in the best conditions ever, so that they can have the feeling that they're gonna evaluate safely, with reducing the fatigue, and so that they can really focus on their missions. So having a lot of training and exercise and drills is really of essence. Regular feedback and functional analysis for permanent improvement is also of essence, as we've discussed that. Have appropriate plans and purchase policy, because you need to buy what you need, and you need to buy what you can afford, and you need to buy what is appropriate to your infrastructure. And then, last but not least, participate in such events like today. As I said, Paris doesn't. I did. Sorry for the wording, but I didn't know shit when I started this business, and it's the information that I shared with you guys, with specialists like you, like you all are, which helped us a lot to improve our system. And I think that's also of essence to improvement. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Michel. It's really interesting to kind of see all the different activities, and the collaboration bit at the end was, I think, just a great finish. I think this is where continually learning those people, those people in the community that are involved in this type of activity, to continue to work as a community and share ideas. And it's great to be able to do events like this to help share different practices and different approaches. And I remember Laura and I kind of, the presentations that Paul and Michelle gave were very similar in terms of what they covered, but we thought it was really useful to show what different people do. And I think particularly a key thing is, I think Michelle's mentioned it right at the start of his presentation there, is that every airport's situation is unique, which brings unique challenges with it, and that means that you end up having to tailor what you do to the situation you find yourself in, and that's very specific as well. And I think that's it's a really interesting one. So should we take some questions now? So let me just see what we've got here in terms of questions. Do you have a limitation for snow height in ILS critical and sensitive areas, as an excessive amount of snow might interfere with ILS signals? I don't know if anybody from either the airports. I think we're at a point where if you're interfering with an ILS with snow height, you've probably got lots of snow. I can imagine a man in Iceland who might know the answer to that. But
yeah, so at Gatwick we definitely do. So when we go into kind of adverse weather conditions where the visibility kind of deteriorates, we do go into cat-free operations. So we kind of push everything back away from the runway in order to protect those surfaces. So yeah, short answer is yes, we do, and we do have to take some kind of action in order to protect the ILS and the associated areas.
And similar thing with you, Michelle, in Paris?
Fortunately, we didn't have that much snow.
That's a bonus. Yeah, cool. So next one, actually, the next one was, I think it kind of, there's a question and it answers. There's an answer in the question. So there's the one from Klaus there that says they have corrosion problems in winter at the undercarriage and flaps. Is there certification needed for snow clearance products? Which products are allowed? And talking undercarriage and flaps, I get in the context of snow clearing equipment. And then actually I was exchanging with a couple of my colleagues as well, and Armand's then answers that quite well himself. There's no specific certification for products. And if we're talking about de-icing of aircraft first, maybe going back to what we had yesterday, I know that's very much something between the aircraft manufacturers, the type certificate holder of the aircraft, and what fluids and things can be used on their aircraft. And that's very much kind of an operational thing, particularly between the manufacturer and of the aircraft in that context, and the types of fluids you can use on the aircraft. But then when it comes to the snow clearing equipment itself, it's not specifically a certification of snow clearing equipment. It's, is it fit for purpose? Does it do the job? And there's lots of other things associated with materials and things. Yeah, Michelle, you probably know.
Maybe our friend was willing to mention about the formate effect on brakes, probably. Actually, formate is the studies that have been made on the corrosion action on the brakes, on aircraft brakes. First of all, it depends on the manufacturers. Not all the manufacturers have the same effect on brakes. That's one thing. Formate is also the most environmental product, most friendly or environmental product as far as snow clearing is concerned. So difficult to make a decision on going on another product. Maybe Paul is using, or I think maybe Heathrow is using a different product than Formate. I'm not sure though. But right now, it's true that Formate may have some effect on the brake on the brakes, but definitely depends on manufacturers.
Thanks for that. Anybody else wants to add on that one? Yeah, it's covered that really well. Cool, perfect. Armand's gave a thumbs up there, so that's obviously good. There's a question from Lee there about runway de-icing fluid, an example in the UK with for environmental reasons. New, more environmentally friendly fluids are less usable due to low ground temperatures. Is that anything anybody's come across in terms of? I know we continually have discussions about. We were talking in the last session about another context with environmental trade-offs against performance and safety, and it's something I know, particularly in the wider system, as we bring in more environmentally friendly things into the aviation system, we look at where there are safety and performance trade-offs, and that kind of squaring the circle of that, did I say that right? Kind of, is a key part of the environmental game. I don't know if anything.
Yeah, so I mean, at Gatwick, the environmental aspect of spreading anti-ISA is quite big. We do actually have a water quality manager who his sole kind of job is to look at that kind of part of the process, amongst other things that happen throughout the year. There isn't an environmentally friendly or 100% environmentally product out there that we're aware of, because we have been in search of such a product. But what we do is anything that we do spread on the runway or the taxiways or on the stand infrastructure does actually get put into balancing ponds, and we do kind of treat the product before it's then released into the rivers to kind of re-oxygenate it, so it doesn't cause too many adverse effects to the environment. But unless somebody else can kind of come forward and say, yeah, there is definitely an environmental in product, we'd definitely be keen to look at it, but we just haven't found anything as yet.
And I know certainly in the wider context across the aviation ecosystem, there's lots of work on environmentally friendly everything you could possibly think of. So maybe there is a day, and as soon as that's available, I'll make sure our environment team are hopefully aware of it and promoting its availability. But we'll see what happens with that. But then again, like I say, the other thing is continually ensuring there's a trade. We understand where we might be trading environmental benefits for safety and performance as well, and particularly where we're not degrading safety for environmental benefits in that context. So it's a continual part of the discussion. So that's great. So we'll move on to the next one. Actually, Stefano, I saw it in on your question about GRF, and maybe Michelle can comment on it some more, is how GRF is handled. And I saw in your slide you particularly talked about in terms of GRF for each mandatory inspection and each significant weather change. Is there anything else you want, either Paul or Michelle, you want to add on that in terms of how you handle GRF?
Yeah, so from our point of view, we won't do a downgrade. We will basically go out there and re-inspect the runway. And then whenever the weather conditions change, we will always go and inspect the runway. We do have access to sensors, such as Michael, but we would always send an inspection vehicle out there to re-inspect following PIREPs. We wouldn't act on that information, and we definitely won't use friction testing vehicles as part of our decision-making process.
Okay, and Michelle, from your side, he was on the slide. Is there anything else you want to add on that?
No. Paul said it all. I mean, it's the only problem that we have with GRF right now is how fast we can react to a modification, a change in the runway status. It's not obvious in winter. It's much more difficult in summer with heavy rainfalls, and that's where PIREPs and sensors can be of importance, because by the time your guys get out, get on the truck, get the clearance from ATC, and get on the runway, it can take up to 10 or 15 minutes, maybe more than that. And that's where you have to react fast so that we can give the most accurate information to the crews. Things can move very fast. We've experienced that with runway excursion last October at Paris Folly, and there again, the more we can be reactive, the better it's going to be.
Fantastic. And actually that moves on nicely to there's another question from Stefano. Is there any influence on the friction characteristics of the runway with the use of de-icing products versus only water contamination? I don't know if
yeah, so if we've got a code 5, which obviously indicates the runway is wet and we've spread the ISO, we would always send out via way of snow tan. But the actual anti-ISO doesn't affect or change the physical characteristics of the runway. That's why it's kind of chosen for that particular kind of use. So we will promulgate that we've treated the runway via snow tam and on the ATIS, but it doesn't change the physical characteristics in terms of braking action.
That makes sense. I got a thumbs up from Stefano, so that's great. Obviously answered that to his satisfaction. And then the last question we have here from Audrey McCann is, as a pilot reporting is a major element in runway condition monitoring. If you have airports, if you have the situation where you have a runway used only for takeoffs, how do you monitor and report on those runways when there's no braking action because it's only used for takeoff?
So yeah, I mean, GRF is obviously applicable to both landing and departing aircraft. Although the characteristics of the runway are kind of treated slightly different, it does all still fall within the same kind of RCAM process, if you like, or the GRF process. So the runway it fits within the RCAM matrix, and it is what it is. And the flight crews will basically make, if I'm not trying to teach people to suck eggs, but the pilots will do what they need to do based on whether they're landing or taking off, based on what the actual RCAM or the RCR is really. Doesn't change the process, it's still treated the same. We don't just have at Gatwick a takeoff runway, it is only landing and takeoff, but yeah, so it's the same as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Michelle, that's all.
Yeah, in addition to what just Paul said, actually, takeoff is warming up the at least the first 2/3 of the runway. So what you're have to be monitoring is the last third of the runway, which will not be covered by takeoff. So actually, this is what we focus on, and especially when you have snow or ice conditions. So we'll definitely have the last third. I mean, the 3/3 of the runways are covered by sensors, but this is where sensors make sense as well. Just to give us, an idea of what the contamination of the runway is, what the temperature of the runway is. But most of the time on runway dedicated for takeoffs, the most sensitive part is the last third of the runway.
Fantastic, thanks for that, and thanks for all the inputs there in the discussion. I know Laura had a few kind of final thoughts just to add from her side, from an airline perspective.
Yeah, I mean, stepping away from GRF a little bit and going back to some of the things that Paul and Michelle talked about in their presentations in terms of snow plans. So Paul and Michelle were invited today as sort of, best practice, as great examples of robust snow plans. And I guess from an airline perspective, when I'm looking at winter readiness and working with our airports that we fly to, the snow plans are a really critical piece of documentation, and sharing that with us and getting all of those stakeholders involved in your snow plan testing, promulgating any differences that may anything changes, is a really important part, I think, in terms of that winter readiness. And I know from being involved in it from an airport perspective and now on the airline side, it all kind of feeds into that communication that we really do need with our airports, our de-icing providers, and everyone on this call, essentially, to be able to be as prepared as possible for when the weather comes. So just thank you both for sharing your great examples of of how you test, how you learn, and your processes. I really appreciate it, and hopefully anyone on the call has taken those learnings away and can perhaps look at their own processes and see where we can do better.
Fantastic, and I think it's a great way to finish. Hopefully you found the discussion really useful. Huge thanks to all our panelists, particularly also to Greg. There was nothing particularly from a ground handling side, but thanks so much for coming back on this one. And thanks to everybody for the whole week, particularly to Laura and also her colleague Nick Pelham from EasyJet, who kind of came up with the original idea for this collaboration and to kick off this week of events that we've been doing. And yeah, thanks to everybody who joined, and we look forward to having more events like this over the next few months to help continue to promote winter readiness over the next few months. So thanks everybody for being involved, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your summer and have a safe next 2-3 months as we head into the winter period. Thanks everybody. Bye bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.